I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Will Ferrell's character, Jacoby Mugatu, said it perfectly in Zoolander. Sometimes it feels like the world can't see what's so incredibly clear and obvious. Welcome back, and thank you for wanting to know the facts and the truth. What's going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is big. You can't miss it on the news. You can't miss it on college campuses, and you really can't miss it online. But what are the facts? Why is this happening? That's what we're here to answer. Our approach is to examine the major themes and focus on the important events that help you make sense of what's happening today. We care about knowing the truth. We also care about the basic human right to live in peace. We care about ending the suffering. We care about finding justice. And we think you're here because you do too. The only path for us then is to go after the facts and be open to what they show us. Life can be beautiful without hatred, violence, and war, and maybe the way there starts with better understanding each other. Better understanding the Jewish people, the Palestinian people, the history of their conflicts and past peace efforts, and some of the major issues standing in the way of forging real peace. What the Hell is Going On in Gaza is a 9-part series made up of 30 episodes, each designed to help you understand a different but important part of the picture. Over the past 20 episodes, we've discussed a lot. Facts and history and who bears responsibility for what. Now, in part 5, we'll examine the question of who does the world blame, because it has a real effect on what you hear. We'll provide you with facts and evidence to help you better judge whether what you hear is a fair and honest perspective on what's happening in Gaza. Here's what we'll cover. Episode 21, World Reaction is Reliable. Episode 22, Is there a double standard? Episode 23, Does Israel fight fair? First up is episode 21. Here we'll take a closer look at how the world reacted to Hamas's October 7th attack and its aftermath, and why it shouldn't be a surprise. On October 7th, Hamas terrorists, followed by thousands of Palestinian civilians, crashed through the border into Israel, unleashing hideous cruelty upon Israeli civilians, rape, torture, murder, and kidnapping. What happened next? Almost immediately, in fact, before Israel had even retaliated against Hamas, there were demonstrations around the world celebrating Hamas and vilifying Israel. Politico reported that over 1,000 pro-Palestinian demonstrators took to Times Square in New York to protest against Israel the day after Hamas's horrific attack and before any retaliation whatsoever by Israel. That is not pro-Palestine. That is anti-Semitism. It's notable, too, that they chanted, "Resistance is justified when people are occupied," when, of course, Gaza is not occupied. Also, on October 8th, the day after Hamas's attack, and before any retaliation by Israel, the Washington Post reported on Americans celebrating the Hamas attack. Referring to increased security at Jewish holy sites and communities in the U.S. and Europe, the Post reported that, quote, "The move comes after videos appeared to show people in several cities celebrating the surprise assault." They also reported that in Berlin there were, quote, "people celebrating the attacks on Israel by distributing sweet baked goods." And it got worse from there. At many colleges and universities across the country, Jewish students were harassed, intimidated, chased, and assaulted by pro-Palestine demonstrators that included other students as well as some faculty and activists. Politico reported that the president of the Student Bar Association at NYU School of Law wrote in the association's newsletter, quote, "This week I want to express first and foremost my unwavering and absolute solidarity with Palestinians in their resistance against oppression toward liberation and self-determination. Israel bears full responsibility for this tremendous loss of life." The instantaneous reaction to celebrate Hamas and attack Jews, including young college students in America, was shocking. Do they really think a college sophomore in Massachusetts who happens to be a Jew is somehow connected to the grievances of Palestinians against the state of Israel? Do they really think terrorizing these young people will advance the cause of the Palestinian people some 6,000 miles away on the other side of the world? Do they really think the cause of peace and human rights are best served by supporting terrorists who openly call for the murder of all Jews, who rape, torture, and murder, who push children toward martyrdom, who offer only a brutal, repressive theocracy that subjugates women and kills or imprisons anyone who is LGBTQ+. And this didn't just happen on college campuses. The same instantaneous explosion of hatred happened at the same time in too many places across the world. Within a week of Hamas's attack on Israel, large numbers of anti-Israel protesters took to the streets in France, Spain, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Italy, Norway, Romania, Serbia, Greece, Iceland, Australia, Brazil, South Africa, India, the Philippines, Malaysia, Kenya, Sri Lanka, Cyprus, and others, including nearly every country in the Middle East and North Africa. In Sydney, Australia, within just a few days of Hamas's attack, around 1,000 protesters gathered at the Sydney Opera House and chanted, "Gas the Jews," among other hateful slogans. The Al Jamina reported on rioters burning down an ancient synagogue in Tunisia. Quote, "The synagogue attack came hours after false media reports claimed that the Israeli Defense Forces had bombed the Al-Ali hospital in Gaza. U.S. and Israeli officials, along with independent intelligence analysts, have all concluded that the blast was due to an errant rocket launched by the Gaza-based Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist group." In Amsterdam, where earlier in 2023, 154 soccer fans were arrested for repeated anti-Semitic chants and songs, anti-Israel protesters came out en masse 1 week after the Hamas attack. And just days before, Jewish schools in Amsterdam were closed for safety reasons. Later in October, hundreds of local men in Dagestan, Russia, stormed the airport's runways and terminals looking for a flight carrying Jewish passengers. They were intent that day on killing Jews. Anti-Semitism has been called a latent virus. It never goes away, but it does flare up, often. Clearly, Hamas's attack and Israel's response have been a trigger, and anti-Semitism around the world has skyrocketed. In Paris, 3 12 to 13-year-old boys were arrested in June for gang raping a 12-year-old girl. Allegedly, her boyfriend and the others were enraged to learn she was a Jew, so they dragged her into a shed and raped her while yelling anti-Semitic insults and referencing the war in Gaza. Sadly, anti-Semitism is pervasive and predictable. It was no surprise seeing how the world responded to the brutal cruelty of the attacks on Israeli civilians by Hamas. They blamed Israel, ignored or denied the facts, and sought to punish Jews everywhere in the world. Even if you put politics aside, what about the children? Are they deserving of celebrations of their tortures and murders in the streets of New York, in the streets of London, in the streets of Sydney? Do they deserve to be harassed and assaulted, raped? What exactly was their crime? Being Jews? Israel is not perfect. It has made mistakes. Its people are not perfect. They have made mistakes. Sometimes they do things that are wrong, but they and Israel are not worse than other people. Israel wrestles with the same things that have defined mankind for the entire history of human civilization, the same things that every modern, democratic, pluralistic society wrestles with, including America. And in the pressure cooker of conflict, they make the same mistakes and sometimes do things wrong, just like other people. Israel and Jews are not somehow worse. Yet the world attributes evil intent to what Israel does, and the world unleashes its fury against all Jews everywhere, seemingly whenever it can find the opportunity. This is not because Israel is different. It is just shameful bigotry. This anti-Semitism that is so prevalent around the world has more than just these implications. What about the media? Are all reporters in newsrooms immune? Of course not. Political leaders? Same thing. The point is to question what you hear. When the world rushes to condemn Israel for bombing the Al-Ali Arab hospital just because Hamas said Israel did, and the media reported right away with no fact-checking whatsoever, doesn't mean it's true. It wasn't. Quote, everybody says is not a good enough reason. Thank you for watching episode 21 of our series, What the Hell is Going On in Gaza? We hope you learn more context in this episode and understand better now the world's reaction to October 7th. If you'd like to leave a comment or get in touch, visit our website at www.getthefactsmiddleeast.com. There's much more to learn, so we hope you'll keep going. Next up is episode 22, where we'll dig into another key question. Is there a double standard when it comes to Israel? Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your interest in learning more about the war in Gaza. And remember, where there is no knowledge, there can be no insight.